From the pioneers of the silver screen to today's new realism, French directors have shaped filmmaking around the world. France is considered to be the originators of the cinema. In the beginnings, it was 1895 to 1919. The Lumiere brothers created the first film. They invented and manufactured a photographic equipment which devised an early motion picture camera and projector called the cinematograph in 1895. They created the first film called La Sortie de l'usine Lumière à Lyon, which was called Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory, which is considered the first motion picture, becoming the birth of film. They figured out how to combine filming record and projection into a single device. The 1920s started the age of silence. The emergence of silent movies in 1920s restored the prestige of French cinema and provided what is now known as the auteur tradition. The towering achievement of the French cinema in the silent era was Abel Gance's 6-hour biopic of Napoleon in 1927. It is now widely acknowledged as one of the greatest of all time silent films. Historical dramas and literary adaptations were most important genres of the 1920s, and films became more visually daring and much longer. Famous filmmakers of the time period include Alberto Cavalcanti, Jacques Fader, Raymond Bernard, and Louis Deluc. The 1930s offered the creation of sound in the cinema, which created an influx of new talent. Filmmakers like Jean Renoir, René Clair, and Julien Duvivier thrived on the new changes. The 1930s offered an escape from the economic and political realities and often mirrored the changing political climate. Such films like Le Crime de Monsieur Lang or The Crime of Mr. Lang reflected the misplaced optimism in the Front Populaire, which realist dramas evoked the darkening mood as fascism took root in Europe. The 1940s became the years of darkness in France as the war had started. Filmmaking came to a standstill, and film stock and electricity was severely rationed, and filmmaking declined rapidly. The years preceding the First World War, France was the dominant player in the film production industry. French cinema would have probably been more dominant around the world if it wasn't for World War I. During and after the war, many of France and other European stars left for Hollywood, which started the dominance of the Hollywood film. The United States cinema industry got a later start than the French film industry, starting in the late 1800s. In 1872, Edward Muybridge created the first ever movie made by placing 12 cameras on a racetrack and rigging the cameras to capture shots in quick sequences as a horse crossed in front of their lenses. In 1905, Nickelodeon began to offer an easy and inexpensive way for the public to watch movies. This helped the movie industry move into the 1920s by increasing public appeal alongside the widespread use of theaters to screen propaganda for the wars. 1912 gave rise to the first film studio in Hollywood, California, the Warner Brothers production. The 1930s was considered the golden age of Hollywood. The new era in film history began with industry-wide movement towards sound into film, creating new genres such as action, musical, documentaries, social statement films, comedies, westerns, much more, with stars such as Laurence Olivier, Shirley Temple, and director John Ford rising to rapid fame. The Jazz Singer became the first film with sound. During this time, U.S. films were seen in a negative manner due to early censorship compared to French films. Previous to this, films were sexually explicit, violent, and sometimes immoral. The 1950s were a time of immense change in American culture and around the world. In the post-war United States, new societal trends, advances in music, and the rise of pop culture. The 1960s saw a great push for social change. Movies during this time focused on fun, fashion, rock and roll, societal shifts like the civil rights movement, and transitions into cultural values. The 1970s saw a rush of creativity due to changes and restrictions on language, sex, violence, and other strong thematic content. In the 1980s, the past creativity of the film industry became homogenized and over-marketable, designed for audience appeal. I now want to talk about the culture between French films and American films. The French are very prideful in their cinema. They enjoy present art and leaving viewing reflection on life. The French criticize movies that are more for entertainment because they lack artistic value. French cinema is taken seriously, traditionally considered an art rather than merely a form of entertainment or industrial product. Americans create films for entertainment and money. They're very predictable and always have a happy ending or patriotical ending. With a little time left, I want to talk about top-rated French and American films. Number 5 for French is Amelia, made in 2001. Number 4 is Playtime, made in 1967. Number 3 is The Passion of Joan of Arc, made in 1927. Number 2 is La Règle de Jeu, made in 1939, meaning the rules of the game. And number 1 for French films is Les Enfants du Paradis, made in 1943. For the American films, number 5 is Gone with the Wind, made in 1939. Number 4, Singing in the Rain, made in 1952. Number 3, The Godfather, made in 1972. Number 2, The Gold Rush, made in 1925. And number 1, Citizen Kane, made in 1941. The film industry of both French and American history is very satisfying to learn about. I hope you enjoyed learning about it too.